ideas? Do you have any other ideas in other cities? My belief is, my strong belief is that, the main purpose of teaching English to give access to our students to worldwide research and any other experience. So, well, we increase dramatically the access to professional research and other literature information in English, because, well, the resources that are published or given in English much prevails the resources in Russian, in Kazakh, in any other minor language that is spoken in Kazakhstan. Would you agree? So that's why, well, for me, this is the main purpose of teaching and learning English, to have access to the most resources in the world. So, but let's go, well, to the course itself, and huge thanks go to the English teaching assistant programs and assistants themselves, well, for being kind to us, well, to share their insights that they gained during this very year being in Kazakhstan. So I've already mentioned to my participants that, well, being students because most of them are quite young people and just, well, either finished bachelor degree or master degree at their universities. So, well, they've got a really nice learning experience, international experience, and they are very welcome to share with us, well, their findings, well, in terms of... Ага, сейчас начну и представлю. Thank you. Well, and well, yeah, this is the idea. So, well, this is a huge gratitude to our English teaching assistants. And today with us is Nick Mosher. I'm really sorry, but I could mispronounce, well, the name of this person. Well, but thank you to Nick, yeah, because his well, learning experience is great. And a few words about his biography. So, well, he was born in 2000, just last year. Well, and his major is international politics and Russian double major. So his hobby is football. And hopefully he had found, well, good football pitcher to practice this hobby with him. So, and also his hobby is fishing, hopefully in Aterau, the city he is based in now. He has found plenty opportunities for him to fish. But, well, he has some international experience in terms of traveling, because during the summer of 2021, he participated in the critical language scholarship, which was planned to take place in Nizhny Novgorod, but the program was shifted to online format due to COVID. So he took, well, instead of, well, going to Nizhny Novgorod, he visited Ukraine, so where he worked during the day and participated in the program at night. So you see, well, his international experience is really interesting. So, well, and as you see, well, his interest, academic interest, well, refers to Russian state media. Sorry, Nick, it's really difficult to pronounce the internet camps, yes, well, in Chinese sounds. So, but he's interested in learning and extending his experience about Chinese and Russian culture as well. And now he's welcome to share his experience in terms of vocabulary.
Hi, all. Yeah, thank you so much for that very nice introduction. I actually...
Sorry, Nick, but now...
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, so my name is Nick Mosher. Pronounced my name perfectly. Thank you. And I am a Fulbright English teaching assistant. based here in Adderall. I've been teaching at Das Muhammad University, which has been absolutely fantastic. I've been here for the past 10 months. I just graduated university in the United States. And so this was really my first teaching experience. I've had a lot of international experience, as mentioned before, but it was my first time teaching, and it was an amazing experience. I met so many fantastic Kazakh teachers and professors here who really helped me along my way and helped me develop my different methods. And so I want to take this time to talk to you guys to share some of the teaching methods that I developed and was able to practice while teaching here, so that maybe I'd be able to help you guys as you continue to teach and learn English. So we're going to get right into it. I do have a presentation, which if it's possible for me to share my screen, if that's all right with you guys, we'll get into it.
Yeah, you can do.
Okay, great. So can you guys see that?
Yeah, it's all right.
You can see it? All right, perfect. So there's going to be a little bit of call and response. I am going to ask you guys a few questions, if that's all right with you. So you might have to be ready to answer. So for those teachers, please make sure you get your students to respond if I ask something. But so I wanted to talk today about using Latin roots to build linguistic versatility. So a big thing about it's really been a back and forth about being able to teach English, but also sort of learning along the way. Because this is my first teaching experience, and it's also been my first time living abroad for this long, right? In a country where, you know, I did have experience speaking Russian. I didn't have any Kazakh experience coming in. But dealing myself with being a non-native speaker of the languages that the country I'm living in speaks, right? And so I was able to look at myself and see, like, well, what are sort of the issues that I'm having that I would have appreciated learning while taking the language, and trying to then turn that around and say, well, what about my students when they're in an environment where they are speaking English? How can I help prepare them best for that? And that's really what it gets down to as English instructors, right? We want to be able to prepare our students for situations where they are with native English language speakers, right? And so that's what we're talking about, building up this linguistic, right? So linguistic versatility, the way that I approach that is, so linguistic, right? Language, and then let's see if we can, there we go. Versatility, if you guys don't know, that's a noun, English word, meaning the ability to adapt to different situations, okay? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build up their versatility to different communicative situations, right? Situations where they are going to be speaking with native speakers. And no matter really how amazing your students get at English, I'm sure they're going to be fantastic, right? I've been able to work with some of my students here have been such talented linguists, right? They're speaking 5-6 languages. They're really blowing me out of the water. But because they are not native speakers, because they were not born in this situation, a native English speaking country, there's always going to be certain situations where they might not know every single word that's being said, right? They're going to run into words or phrases or idioms that they've never heard before, right? They're in a foreign language, they're in a foreign country speaking a foreign language, and therefore there are going to be foreign words, there are going to be foreign idioms, foreign phrases that they don't recognize right away. And what we want to do as instructors is build up their versatility of this, their ability to adapt to that situation, to be able to find a way to get through this sort of unknown situation, to make sure that their lines of communication don't break down in that situation, to make sure they're still able to have an effective conversation with someone, even when they're in uncharted waters, right? And so that was a big thing that I noticed here, living in Kazakhstan, speaking Russian, trying to learn a little bit of Kazakh too, and running into conversations where I hear a word I don't know, or I hear a phrase I don't know, like, oh God, like, what do I do now, right? What are they saying? Am I missing something, right? Giving your students the ability, when you're not there, when you're not going to be there to guide them, the ability to teach themselves on the fly, to be able to help them adapt to situations that are new to them. And so I came up with a method for this using Latin, right? So Latin is the language of the Roman Empire. which was about 2,000 years ago, more less than that, a little bit, but it covered a lot of Western Europe, Southeast Europe, and Turkey, as well as some of Northern Africa, right? And so the Latin language has a lot of influence, especially on Western European languages, such as Spanish, French, and English. So about 30% of the English language is either influence or borrows from Latin, right? There's going to be some sort of effect on the English language from Latin, or straight up, they're taking a word from Latin and putting it in English, right? We see that sometimes as well. And so we want to be able to use this sort of Latin influence somehow. If we can understand how the English language is built, we'll have a better ability to adapt to it, right? And so we're going to look at these Latin roots, right? I said we're going to build linguistic versatility using Latin roots. So what I mean by root is, right? If you look at this image I've got right here, can you see my mouse circling that? Those are what we call the roots, right? It's the part of the tree that goes into the ground to hold it and to suck up nutrients for it. And from these roots, right, we get the part of the tree that we actually see, right? The trunk, the branches, the leaves, right? But it all comes from these roots. And that's how we're going to look at the English language, right? The English language is this tree that has grown from the Latin language, right? And there's a lot of other languages influencing it too, right? So there's like a lot of Greek influence. So we have Greek roots as well. So it's not just Latin, but Latin is one of the major ones, right? And so from the Latin language, we were able to get a lot of English. Okay, so that's how we're going to want to look at this, right? So we want to find this foundation, these roots, to be able to better understand the English language. So, for example, we're going to look at the word socius. This is a Latin word. It's a noun meaning comrade or friend, okay? And this usually is used to describe some sort of bond or relationship or interaction between two parties that is friendly, right? Two people that are friendly, right? Some sort of interaction between people, right? Socius. And so from the word socius, this Latin word, we get a lot of English words. We get a lot of English derivatives, right? These words derive or grow from Latin. So the Latin word socius, as we see again, right? It's in the roots. And then from that, a lot of the English language is grown, right? So we have the word social. So this is where the interaction comes in. Can anyone tell me what the word social means in English? I have some trouble seeing everyone, so anyone can really call out if they'd like. It's always tough the first time, but we're gonna get used to it. We're gonna have some people call out. We got anyone that wants to unmute? What if I called someone out? What about from who else? Can we get someone from the, well, I see you guys all in that window sitting there. Can we get someone from you guys to tell me what social means in English? Or else group? Anybody? It's gonna be less fun if I just have to, if I translate it myself. Oh. We're gonna wait it out, okay. All right, well, so the word social, right? Word social means enjoying, right, an interaction between people, right? A very social person is going to be very talkative, is going to be going out of their way to interact with people, right? In a social situation, okay? Then we have the word like society, right? An organized group of people that interact often with each other, usually that follows certain rules, laws, the same way. We have to associate, right? Which is sort of a tough one, has a lot of different meanings. We're usually grouping things together, right? Labeling things in the same way, as well as interacting with things, right? It has more than one meaning, but it usually means bringing things together and interacting in some way, okay? Then we also have the word like to socialize, right? So this is just the word social, right? Which we were using as an adjective before, making it a verb, right? So this is the actual interaction between parties or people. And so all these words, as you can see, take this SOCI root, this Latin root, and is applying it to these different words. And you can see how all these words have something to do with an interaction or a relationship, right? Which goes back to that word, here we go, goes back to that word socius, right? So which is an interaction between parties. Does that make sense? Okay. So we see sort of how that branches out in that way. And sort of the reason I came up with this, the reason that I started thinking about this is because in the United States, we have something called the SAT, which is a standardized test, multiple choice format. I think it's a lot like the IELTS for you guys, except this is for getting into American universities, right? And there used to be a part of the SAT test, which was SAT vocabulary. And essentially what they were doing was just taking very, very complex and usually old English words, and they would say, define it, right? And you'd have 4 options for what the definition of this word was. And they would be really complicated, really strange words, usually the ones that you've never even seen before, right? And so people were trying to come up with ways to study for this. Like, how do we, excuse me, how do we possibly help prepare our students to be able to see these words that they're never going to see before? A little bit like how your English students are going to run into words when they speak English that they've never recognized before, right? How do we prepare them to understand these words when they've never seen them before, right? And the solution that a lot of people came up with was, let's teach our students Latin. There's Latin classes throughout America. I took Latin in middle school, right? The reason for that is to better understand the English language. Latin language is dead, right? You're not going to be talking to anyone in Latin, but it helps you have a better grasp of the English language and be able to derive meaning from words you may not recognize in English. So for example, the word to abjure, right? Does anyone know what that means? It's a tough word. To be honest, I didn't know what it meant for a while. So it's a very strange word. It's not one that's used in English very often, but this is the sort of word that they would put on the SAT. That's a word that you don't really recognize at all. And so basically the challenge for the test taker is to be like, okay, I've never seen this word before. How can I figure out what it means? But if you've been studying your Latin, you can break this word down and find a meaning for it. So let's break the word down. We know it's a verb, right? It says to. But if we look at the word abjure, right, we can break it down. If we know that ab is a Latin prefix, right? It's a part of a word that you put at the beginning. If we know that that means away, right? Ab means away. Okay, that's part of it. And we look at jurare, which is a verb in Latin, which means to vow, right? Which sort of means like to swear loyalty to something, right? Or to promise something. Like, okay, so if we're promising away something, what does that mean, right? We're going to try to find a meaning from that. If you look at that long enough, you can think, okay, maybe it means to renounce, right? Now it's a fancy word, to reject, to push away, right? To no longer identify with something. So because we knew our Latin, because we know that ab is a prefix for away, because we know that jurare means something like to vow, when we have that multiple choice, we're like, okay, that probably means to renounce, right? And so I wanted to be able to help students of English be able to get into situations like this. It's probably not going to be as complex words like abjure, because that's sort of a strange one. But like if we're looking at words and if you hear something that's more simple, you're like, well, I know that word, I know that in Latin that prefix means this, so I think I understand sort of the meaning of it. So it's just not a complete breakdown of communication. It's helping them piece together so that they're able to stay on top of what's going on in the conversation. So let's look at exactly how we can do this in a classroom environment, right? So the way to try to come up with methods to teach students not only new vocabulary, help them in conversations, but also to be able to teach them these Latin words, give them a basis to work from, okay? So we're gonna look at a worksheet in a second, but it's gonna be based off of these 2 words, which are essentially the noun and verb version of itself. It's like social and socialize, right? So it's portare, which is a verb meaning to carry, right? Like to carry, like that. And portus, which is a noun meaning haven or harbor, right? It's somewhere where ships come in and they drop goods or take goods, right? And then they sail away. So we're going to look at another sheet, a worksheet that I've used for this. Let's see if I can find it though. Okay, my screen sharing is paused. So I'm just going to stop sharing and restart. Is everything good so far? Are there any questions right now before we get into the sheet? Anything from anyone? All right, perfect. Okay, let's go to the sheet here. All right, is everyone able to see the sheet? Yes, no, maybe so. Your silence is going to be a yes. All right. So look at this again, right? We're going to put the Latin root up top, or port, right? We're looking at portus, portare, and the meaning there I'm going to put to carry, right? Or haven. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So how this is going to work in a classroom environment, right, is I'm going to be at the top, the front of the class, right? Everyone's going to have a worksheet, and we're going to walk through this step by step, right? We're going to look at all these different derivatives. So you can think about this again like that tree that I showed before, right? Port is going to be in the roots, right? And then off of that is going to branch all of these English derivatives, all these English words that come are influenced by the Latin word portus, portare, port, right? And so we're going to go through these and we're going to understand exactly how they relate back to the Latin root and then what they mean, right? Why there's some differences. All right, so then we can look at the first one. I would go, all right, port, it's a noun meaning a town or city where ships can take on or unload cargo, right? This is a direct translation to portus, right? It's a haven, that's a safe space for ships to be able to trade, right? And then what we do from there is we don't just want to be lecturing to our students about that. We want them to actually try to derive a meaning for themselves. So from there, I would stop, I look at my classroom, I'd say, can someone give me an example, right? Can someone use this in a sentence? Can someone use port in a sentence? Or I would say, like, does anyone know, can anyone name a port a port in Kazakhstan, right? And then usually someone raises a hand and say, Akta is a port, right? There's a lot of trade going on across the Caspian Sea. It's a great example, right? So, okay, great. Then we're gonna go to the next one, right? Portable, adjective, being able to be moved or carried, right? This glass, right, is portable. I'm able to move it. This building I'm in is not portable, right? And then we're also going to be looking at how these words relate back, right? So we're going to say port. Okay, it goes back to the Latin word port, right? Which is to carry. So something that is portable, able meaning like, it's like the word mosna or mok, right? Moch, right? And we're looking at, we combine those together. It's like able to be carried, right? Portable. We're going to break those words down, right? So then we're going to go to the next one, like to support, right? To hold up or give assistance to something that relates back to the port because it's a hold, right? To carry, to hold. To import, export, right? That goes to bringing something into the country, import. Kazakhstan imports German cars, BMWs, Mercedes, right? And they export oil, right? They're moving it out of the country. They're carrying it away from the country. And we have words like transport, trans meaning back and forth. That's so trans sort of means like между, right? And then port, right? We're carrying something back and forth by vehicle. We're going further, public transportation, right? It's the movement of the public, right? Public meaning people. And we have to deport, right? To forcing a foreigner out of the country, and to report, right? To take information from one place and move it to another, right? To give information to someone that is not where you are right now. You're transporting information. To report, right? So usually you'd go through that a lot slower, but just for the sake of the presentation, I'm just going through that quickly, right? You have them each using it in a sentence to try to make it more tactile for them to be able to make it more of an active learning situation. And then from there, you're going to allow them some written time with it as well, right? So this is where like I've created my own sentences for them to use and to be able to figure out like what exactly fits in there, right? It's fill in the blank. It's pretty straightforward. And so from there, right, we can go through it. Kazakhstan government blanked the American for stealing from Marco. Now I'm going to try again, guys. Can someone tell me what word should be filled in there from above? Anyone can answer? The first one, does anyone have an answer to that? Kazakhstan's government, am I blocking it? Kazakhstan government blanked the American for stealing from Marco. If there's a silence, you as a teacher can maybe give them some hints, right? So the Kazakhstan government, right? And then a foreigner has committed a crime, right? An American like me. If I stole from Marco, a grocery store, if I committed a crime, the government would probably do what to me? Probably. Nadezhda, did I see you start to say something? We can also typing it in, if that's something you'd rather do. To deport, right? Oh, awesome. Oh, we've had
Deport.
wonderful. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, you guys are all muted. Okay, I understand now. Yeah, so if you want to type it, that's perfect too. That's actually probably more convenient. Okay, awesome. So the next one. In New York City, right, there are many forms of what? Blank,
Right.
such as public transportation. Do you guys, there you go, perfect, thank you. Third one, Kazakhstan, blank, lots of oil to Europe, exports, Kazu, wonderful. Good, great job. Okay, so then America blanks in German cars. What does America do with German cars? Can't export it, imports it. Awesome, well done, right? Aktau is Kazakhstan's largest. Awesome, great job. It is difficult to blank fruit because they go bad quickly. Transport, wonderful, right? Because we're not giving it a specific direction, right? That's just the general movement. It's a much more general word than import or export. Next one, laptops are better than televisions because they are smaller and lighter, so they are more
Transportable.
portable, right?
Portable.
Adjective. Good, perfect. Looking for an adjective, great. And then from there, what's the next one? Thank you for blank me in my time of need. Thank you for blank.
Supporting.
Supporting, awesome, great job. Supporting me in my time of need, right? You're holding them up emotionally speaking, right? Which is a lot of what this has to do. But you can also talk about like pillars in buildings, right? It can be a physical thing. Pillars hold up, support the ceiling, right? So it can be emotional, it can be physical. That's a good word to know. Excuse me. And then the last one, my boss asked me to blank on the meeting last week, to report on the meeting last week. Perfect, right? Boss wasn't there, right? But they want to know what's going on. So we report to them what happened. We give them the information from that meeting. That makes sense, everyone? Okay, awesome. And then usually we would have people, you would have your students create 5 sentences using the words above. For time's sake, we will forego that. And it really depends on your students. If you think that they need more time focusing just solely on these words, really understand them better, have them write those 5 sentences. If your students are really killing it, you can do something a little more fun. Sometimes with my students, I would say that the student that can fit as many of these words in 1 sentence as possible, I'll like give them a prize. I usually like get them chocolate or something, right? So try to have them fit like as many like portable, import, export, transport, all into like 1 sentence, right? And the student that can do that grammatically correct and fit as many as possible, right? Wins the prize. Just like something fun to do to mix it up, right? When you're doing a worksheet like this. Okay, great. Good job, y'all. So I didn't realize you were muted before, but here we go. Okay, and then we'll go back to the presentation. Okay. So from there, that's sort of a great way to build linguistic versatility through worksheets, right? A more formal classroom experience. But there are plenty of other ways to do this as well. And one quick way that I'm going to talk about is through using authentic sources in conversation classes, right? And so a lot of times, I know in my experience, I've come to conversation classes, conversation clubs, right? And you know, you want to talk about things, but sometimes it can be limited, right? A lot of the students are focusing on their English practice and not necessarily on trying to have like a super thriving conversation, right? And you want to be able to give them materials to be able to help them succeed, right? So the conversation doesn't just like sort of die or is very limited, right? You want to open it up. And a great way to do this is through authentic sources. And by authentic sources, I mean materials that are not meant for English language learning, right? These sources are meant for the consumption of native English speakers, because that way it's not about learning, it's about entertainment or education or something like that, right? And so you're able to open it up to a lot more subjects and it can be a lot more interesting that way because you're not limited. And so as a teacher, it's important to pick an effective, authentic source that's going to help your students have great conversations to be able to learn something along the way, okay? And so there are some rules going in for putting together a good authentic source to provide to make sure that your source is great. So the first rule would be that subject matter is actually interesting to your students. This comes down to knowing your students well, right? You guys are all here. You guys are all participating today. Like you are clearly very passionate about making sure your students are learning. So you clearly know your students well, understand them, and sort of know what they're interested in, what they like, what they want to do, right? You know, if there is some lack of clarity there, you can always just ask your students at the end of the class period, be like, hey, what are you guys interested in? What do you want to learn about? If you're going to do something a little bit different, what are some things that you're interested in? And I know for me, I've had a lot of just over time learning about like my students' hobbies, what they're interested in, like what questions they had for me as an American coming from a different country, like what they wanted to learn about my country, right? And basing my sort of authentic sources off of that. Number two, it's great when the source has multiple opinions with which the students may agree or disagree, right? You want some sort of conflict of opinions or of a moral stance, right? To be able to give it some sort of, gives it the students an ability to take sides, to give them the ability to disagree or agree with one another. That's a conflict is always a great way to start conversations, to have conversations, right? To make it sort of a debate, make it something that they can argue. Always keep it friendly, always keep it, comfortable for everyone. But yeah, it's always great when you can get a bunch of different sides of an opinion, of different opinions, and it usually can lead to more interesting conversations. So if you can come up with a video or a reading source that is very opinionated, right? Especially if they're able to show more than one side to be able to get your students started, that can always be really, really helpful. Three, I'm an American, right? So I said American slang, but it could be English slang, it could be Irish slang, it could be anything, right? From a native English source that can be scaffolded beforehand and later utilized by students. If you don't know what scaffolding means, this is sort of like preparing your students to facing something that they might not know that they're about to see, or witness through this source, right? So a very simplified version of this would be like American slang, someone saying what's up, right? You look at what's up, literally, right? It means like what is up? It doesn't make any sense, right? But if you understand American slang, that means essentially like how are you? Hi, it's a greeting. And so you would prepare your students for that ahead of time. So you would have like a list, one of them would say, what's up? And then you would define that for them. You would prepare them ahead of time to be ready for that, right? You don't just want to throw them into the fire with these authentic sources because they might not understand. Excuse me. But if you prepare them ahead of time for these things, it's going to be a great way to help them learn, right? They're going to see it on the paper, and they're going to hear it in real life. And then usually you're going to want to encourage them after the fact when you're starting conversations to be repeating that and using that, right? You want that tactile learning. And then finally, a quality of open-endedness to authentic source that allows the conversation to evolve, right? So after you watch the video, that's when the real learning is going to come, right? When they're actually hands-on having the conversation, trying out the new words that you scaffolded for them, that you prepared them for, and having them use the opinions of the whatever source you're using, having them use those opinions to grow their own opinions, to grow the conversation a little bit more, right? So for example, YouTube is a great way to find authentic sources. And so one of the sources I found was this guy. So a lot of my students, a lot of the questions that I was getting was, what's it like to live in America? I grew up very close to New York City, and therefore I got a lot of questions about like, what's New York City like? What's it like to live there? How much do apartments cost? How much does food cost? Like, where do you get your groceries? Like they would ask me like any and everything about New York City, right? So I decided that one of the authentic sources I was going to use was something about New York City. So I found this guy, forgetting his name now, but essentially what he does is a lot of YouTube videos about New York City. And one of the best videos I found was his pros and cons. It was him, one other guy, and they were basically talking about the really good things and really bad things about New York. And they were arguing about them, right? And so it was things like you could find any type of food anywhere in New York City, right? Or for a con, like the traffic's horrible and the air is bad, right? And looking at the really great things about New York City and the really bad things about New York City. And after watching that video, and you shut the computer, and then you open it up for conversation. You ask what people really agreed with, what people disagreed with, and then you ask them to take a side, right? You've heard the pros and cons. Like now, do you ever think you would want to visit New York City? Do you ever think you would want to live in New York City? Would you feel safe there? Would you be happy there? That sort of thing. And when you have them take sides, right, that's where the conflict comes in. And then you have them debate, like, why do you think you're right? Why do you think they're wrong, right? And you're able to open it up and sort of evolve it into a better conversation because you're basing it off of something. They're not just coming up with conversation topics off the top of your head, right? They're able to base it off, a subject matter that's been covered, and then they're able to grow the conversation from there. But it's not just having the subject matter, right? Anyone can come up with subject matter, but it's also giving them that sort of like that seed of an opinion, right? So there were reasons for New York to be really great. But from there, they can be like, and also because like, say you can find food anywhere, right? Any type of food anywhere, that must also be really convenient. Like you don't have to travel really far to get groceries, right? They can form like layering opinions on top of the opinions that were given in the authentic source, and they're able to grow the conversation even more. And so that's why I think using authentic sources can be an amazing way to help with like conversation clubs and more casual classroom environments, to help sort of these conversations grow and also help them learn a little bit about American or English or Irish culture, or wherever the authentic source is from, right? It's a great way to learn culture. It's a great way to help their sort of conversational versatility, right? That's what it's all about as teachers, is building up this versatility for your students when one day you're not going to be there to guide them and they're going to be thrown into an environment where their English language is going to be tested. And that's about it for me. Thank you guys so much for your attention. If you guys have any questions about it, I really loved being able to learn this methodology and develop it. I think it's really important, especially to understand these Latin roots, to be able to build up that versatility, giving them the proper tool set for when they go into these environments where you're not going to be there. And giving them these tools to be able to adjust and adapt on the fly, I think is really important. If you guys have any questions about how you can use that in the class and how you can develop it, if you guys need any materials or inspiration for that, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to help. And thank you guys so much. Now will be the time if you guys have any questions, but thank you. And I'll stop sharing now.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nick. Hopefully, well, you can hear me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can hear it.
and you've mentioned just SAT test, but well, as far as I know, well, the vocabulary for GRE even much worse in terms of memorizing them. So, and definitely, well, would you agree, or probably, well, you would comment that most of these words which GRE involves, well, they are of Latin origin. Am I mistaken?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think a lot of them will be. Like I said previously, like there are going to be other languages that influence English as well, but Latin is the major one, right? That is something that's going to affect probably the most or one of the most of any other root languages that you could study. Yeah, I would say the Latin, that was sort of why I focused on it. I played around a little bit with Greek as well, but I felt like Latin was sort of the most effective for
It
this.
could be, yeah, it could be both. Well, what I mean is that, well, for those who speak Russian or any other Slovenian language, it should be a bit easier to identify these words because sometimes they sound familiar to Slovenian, other Slovenian languages. And probably we can recognize just now while you were speaking about port, the same is true about Russian port. Yeah, it's just, well, a very simple example. Thank you so much. So this is the idea of learning probably Latin and going back to this as well. Sorry, I should switch on the camera. Yeah, thank you. And there is another competition which is really popular in America. I'm speaking about spelling bee, and I'm afraid, well, for every American citizen or person, native speaker, can compete in this very contest. Yeah. So any ideas? Probably you have some learning strategies how to extend your vocabulary stock, and probably again, well, in learning Russian, you've mentioned, or probably you try to learn Chinese. They are absolutely different, well, languages. Any learning strategies of yours in terms of learning vocabulary, instead extending vocabulary?
Yeah, I think that absolutely, like I was saying before, learning Latin, like you were saying with the spelling bee situation, like you'll always hear, for the spelling bees, they'll hear the word and then they'll say like language of origin, right? Where did this word come from? And that can help because of the different like letter patterns that come into play, right? Just like one more way that's influenced. So like if instead of being in a conversation, right, you're reading something, you don't recognize it, that sort of letter pattern, if you recognize that, can be really helpful. But yeah, I think that especially it's sort of tied into like what I was doing, right, is that looking at the Latin roots, but learning extended vocabulary based off theme, right, which sort of we were also doing, right, because they all come from the same Latin root. They all sort of have the same theme, right? They all have to do with carrying or some sort of haven or harbor, right? But even if, you're not finding Latin root, but if you're just trying to learn new vocabulary, doing it in learning it through subject matter or learning it through a common subject, a lot of times can be a lot more effective. And then obviously, I mentioned a lot during my talk, tactile learning, right? Of not just listening and not passive, I guess active learning would be a better way to put it. Not just passively like hearing the information, reading the information, but also talking through it, right? Making your own sentences, right? Where I was saying like, someone put port in a sentence for me, or make your own sentence doing that. As well as writing it down, putting it into situations that I put there, also creating your own sentences on paper. That sort of active learning environment for vocabulary, I found to be really, really effective.
Thank you so much. Yes, well, I absolutely agree with this position to be active listener, active learner, active reader. That's true. Yes. So, and to make notes and be able to identify. So, and thank you for this topic to raise in terms of the knowledge of derivatives forms. I'm speaking about suffixes, prefixes, and their meaning. They should help a lot. Yeah, and I guess it's time to appeal to other moderators. Well, if there are any questions from other cities. American corners, well, in Astana, Kostanay, Pavlodar, Petropavlovsk. Do you have any questions? And you're very welcome to use chat or unmute yourself.
Now, yes. Any questions?
Nick, thank you for your presentation. It was perfect as usual. It's me, Donna.
Oh my gosh, hi, sorry. Yeah, I can't see you back there, but hi, how are you? Good to see you. Oh, there you are, yeah. Hi, thank you.
Yeah, my young teachers are looking for your Instagram, Nick.
Yeah. I ended up deleting that a little bit, try to experience Kazakhstan more, not be on my phone. So I apologize if I haven't seen any of that. I did delete it.
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
gonna do another content meeting on Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Well, but
Yeah.
lower the camera because we can see an office, but with you,
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's
yeah.
Asia. Hi, Asia.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Uh-oh. My camera is not working properly. Sorry. I have a question for you. It's a sort of a little bit unrelated question. So your teaching and linguistic experience in Kazakhstan, do you think it will be helpful for your further studies or career? How would you assess it and use it in your future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of what I got improved upon, right? So I'm going to be starting a career next year. It's not actually going to be in teaching. But I still think that the sort of lessons I learned from teaching here at Ohio State University will absolutely help me. So I'm going to be, I'm still going to be based internationally for my career. I'm going to have to travel quite a bit. And sort of the ability, I had a lot of international students. So it wasn't just Kazakh students. I had students from all over Central Asia and the Caucasus as well. And being able to really work on my communication skills, be able to get my point across, my public speaking skills, and just sort of the ability to be able to relate to and understand a variety of different cultures has been absolutely an amazing experience and something that I've been able to learn over time and I'm absolutely be able to take, especially because I'm going to be traveling so much for my career. I'm going to be talking to people from all over the world, different cultures and languages, and sort of the skills that I learned over time, especially in communication and relationship building, are going to be essential for my career. And so I think I absolutely gained a lot of great professional skills that I'm going to be able to use from now.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Looks like we have some questions in the chat. So we have one that says, do you have summer classes or online course to prepare spelling corrections? To prepare spelling corrections. A lot of
Spelling, yeah.
that, for preparing spelling corrections specifically, I don't know too much. I know, I mean, a lot of that comes with just learning new vocabulary and work on your writing, right? If you are into journaling, right? Try doing it in English every, like once or twice a week, right? Doing that and just like working and practicing on your writing, it's going to help with your spelling. Even if you do it on a computer, right? And you're going to have a spell check for you. And it'll help you sort of correct your spelling specifically. English can be tough. It's not very phonetical when it comes to the spelling of words. On behalf of my language, I apologize, but there's not much I can do at this point about it. Blame the Romans.
It's interesting to know your opinion. So would you recommend to practice spelling with handwriting or typing with the digital devices?
Yeah, I would say, I think when it comes to learning new vocabulary, writing is going to be the most effective, right? They've done a lot of research, not even just for the English language, but for studying in general, right? Writing your notes is much more effective for learning than typing for some reason. So that will help a lot with your vocabulary. When it comes to spelling, you know, if you're writing on a piece of paper, it's not going to correct your spelling right away. But it will if you're using a Word document or some sort of application on your laptop, right? It's going to have a spell check. That can be a lot more effective for working on your vocabulary. So you could even combine the two, right? You can have your laptop open and you can have a notebook. And you can type the word on your computer, make sure it's spelled correctly, and then write it in your journal 1,000 times or in different sentences. And that can be an effective way to sort of use both to work on your spelling and then really hammer it home with your writing.
Thank you. You just proved my assumption that still handwriting matters. Thank you.
Yes, handwriting, and that's something that bad handwriting is something I'm guilty of and have worked quite a bit on. So yes, I do agree. Writing is a good skill to have, especially good handwriting. You don't want to write a thank you note with sloppy handwriting.
Any other comments, questions? Yes, there is a question from our group in Shymkent, which is hot.
I was in Shymkent last week. I know, very hot.
Thank you. Yeah, so well, the question.
I might have missed some things, but from what I understood is like, we have
I'll
to teach
interpret.
Latin for students.
Say it again.
So
Say it again.
we have to teach Latin.
Ah, okay, well. So do you think that Latin knowledge is important? Shall we go to classics and start learning Latin?
I think that the pursuit of Latin is definitely very interesting. I would say it's one strategy to use, and I think it can be very effective if used correctly. If you want to study Latin, that's amazing. I mean, you could also, I studied Latin, so I had sort of an advantage going into teaching it. But you can even just look up online, right? Google is one of the best tools in the world. You can look up English words with Latin roots, right? And then you can find like little groupings online. It'll be like, it'll say like socius, and then it'll give you all the English words for it. So you don't have to, you know, go back to university and get a degree in classics to be able to do this. You can find all of this information online and be able to work on it that way. Or go back to Cambridge and, you know, get a degree in classics. That'll be interesting.
Yeah,
too.
thank you. Yes, we will discuss it well later with our participants, but I got your idea, your point. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. So I guess, well, there are some couple of more questions. Let's have a look. No, just comment. Yeah. So they just invite, well, probably there are some participants, well, who joined us online, hopefully. Yes, that is so, and they might have. Thank you, but I guess, well, there is a lot to discuss, well, with our groups in offline format with moderators, starting with the knowledge of Latin and the knowledge of derivatives, and the number of exercises to drill or tasks to drill in order to practice and enlarge our vocabulary stock, because the number of exercises you demonstrated, Nick, me personally, I'm not happy. So I would insist to include more, in order to practice lots of aspects of a word. And we would discuss, but thank you so much, well, for your insights and for sharing your learning experience. That's true. Yes, and we would consider it. So, and we will discuss the origin, to what extent, well, these knowledge are essential for teachers of English. Probably not for students that much, but for teachers, they need to be aware.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys giving me the time to share some of my findings. So thank you.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
So I guess this is the end of the Zoom session, and the dear moderators, you are very welcome to turn to your groups and continue discussing these very issues. For those who are online, don't worry. So we keep in touch with you, and you will have access to additional resources to study, to investigate. So this very issue and topic. Any comments, final comments, and we are finishing the Zoom session.
No comments. Thank you, Tatiana. It was nice to see you, to see Nick. Thank you very much for nice lecture, for nice information, good information. I think it is very helpful.
Thank you. Okay. Should be thankful to Nick as well to raise this issue. Thank you. Enjoy your session at your place. See you tomorrow at 3.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.